Before we begin our hearing today, I want to take a moment to address what I consider to be an important issue: the people who help make this place work and function. And today we have a very special honoree in the form of our stenographer, Mrs. Onita Brown, who is 70 years young. You know, Ms. Brown, by modern standards, you're just entering middle age. You have a long ways to go on this committee. Congratulations. With that, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess as the committee at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 2F and House Rule 11, recorded votes may be postponed. Today we'll consider H.R. 6213, the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act, and H.R. 6131, the Commercial Space Act of 2023. I now recognize myself for opening statement. Thank you all for joining us at this markup. Today we'll consider two bills that are crucial to our global competitiveness: the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act and the Commercial Space Act. First up is a bill to strengthen quantum information sciences by reauthorizing the National Quantum Initiative Act. The bill was first passed in 2018 in an effort to jumpstart our nation's quantum development. Since then, we've seen tremendous progress. The United States currently leads the world in quantum technologies, and we have a thriving private sector working on quantum advancements. But our leadership is by no means guaranteed. Over the last few years, the foreign competition in the quantum field has surged. The Chinese Communist Party is investing nearly as much in quantum science as the combined total from the rest of the world's governments. Quantum technologies have incredible potential. They will revolutionize healthcare, food production, transportation, and countless other industries. Quantum computers can solve challenges in moments that traditional computers would struggle with for literally years. The nation that leads the way in the development of quantum sciences not only benefits from the new technologies and economic gains, but also earns protection against bad actors who would seek to use quantum technologies for attacks against our economy or national security. We simply cannot afford to fall behind the Chinese Communist Party in quantum technologies. So it's time to reevaluate how we're supporting quantum development here in the U.S. The National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act takes the progress we've made over the past 5 years and positions us strategically to take the next steps forward. It continues the basic research that is fundamental to our success, while also adding a focus on transitional research to help develop applied quantum technologies. It also focuses on workforce development, because without a strong workforce, we won't be able to develop and deploy these new technologies. Finally, it ensures that we're taking full advantage of our international partnerships, so that we're working together to address the threat from the CCP. The second bill before us today is the Commercial Space Act of 2023. This bill was developed over the course of months with input from a wide variety of stakeholders. In our conversations and during our hearings on this topic, we heard repeatedly that American competitiveness depends on a vibrant commercial space economy. Globally, the space industry is worth $550 billion, and it's projected to keep growing. We can either encourage that growth here at home, or we can allow it to flow to other countries who have friendlier environments. The bill before us today supports the growth of the American commercial space industry by providing more certain regulatory environment, helping us comply with our international treaty obligations, and encouraging innovation. To begin with, it creates a certification process for all non-governmental space activities, which reduces the administrative burden for companies looking to operate in space. It promotes responsible behavior and best practices related to space debris, and supports research and development at NASA on how to manage space debris and improve space situational awareness. The bill also elevates the Office of Space Commerce within the Department of Commerce to ensure it has the authority it needs. Finally, extends the learning period for commercial human spaceflight activities, so we have adequate time to innovate and grow this sector. I understand that the White House Space Council is working on commercial space proposals of their own that have been released this very morning. While I respect that efforts, these proposals simply go, I fear, in the wrong direction, and hurt rather than support America's space industry. For one thing, the Space Council proposals go way beyond satisfying our international obligations and instead trespass into space sustainability, asking for authority to regulate everything under the national interest that they deem needs regulation. This is a needless expansion of government authority. Their proposals also fail to extend the critical learning period for human spaceflight activities. Instead, they add new regulations requiring multiple new processes separate from launch and reentry. This would create at least 3 new licenses on top of the MIRB license already needed. Whereas our bill creates a one-stop shop, to the extent possible under this proposal, organizations would be forced to take multiple licenses from multiple cabinet-level departments. It also expands the number of people who are brought in on consultation and could veto spaceflight activities. This interagency review process has already been tested with remote sensing and has led to companies going overseas. It stifles U.S. industry and keeps us behind everyone else. Finally, the Space Council would establish a regulatory process for space traffic management, which is a code for, yeah, you got it, more regulation. In short, instead of streamlining already convoluted processes, the Space Council is adding bureaucracy and stifling, I'm afraid, the innovation. The bill before us today, however, is smart policy which supports our commercial space industry and ensures this crucial sector will thrive here in the United States. And I encourage my colleagues to support both this bill and our bipartisan quantum bill today. And with that, I recognize the ranking member for her opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Lucas. As you have mentioned, we will consider these 2 bills, and on our first bill, sponsored by yourself and by me, we continue excuse me, the work of this committee, which really began 5 years ago. I'm excited that we're moving forward. This initiative fosters a whole-of-government approach to advancing quantum technologies that are likely to generate significant investment from U.S. companies. The success of our earlier act is reflected in the nation's current leadership in quantum applications. After significant stakeholder outreach and bipartisan discussions, we're ready today to update the quantum initiative to meet the new opportunities and challenges facing this revolutionary technology. With this bill, we will make critical human and physical infrastructure investments that will enable the U.S. to move quantum technologies from lab to market. The bill includes a strong focus on preparing a quantum-ready domestic workforce from the skilled technician to the doctoral and postdoc graduates. It authorizes a new quantum test beds, updated state-of-the-art federal research laboratories, and new centers to advance research in quantum sensing, measurement, and engineering. The bill will leverage our international partners to maximize our quantum research and development capabilities and better compete with our adversaries. We'll also officially bring NASA into the initiative and secure for them the resources needed so that we can incorporate their unique capabilities, perspectives, and testing capacity into the quantum ecosystem. Lastly, the bill updates the goals and objectives of many quantum programs across agencies to ensure quantum research can move beyond fundamental research into demonstration and commercial applications. So I enthusiastically support this bill and thank members on both sides of the aisle for their important contributions and a series of bipartisan amendments that will be offered. The next bill we will consider is the Commercial Space Act of 2023, and regrettably, I will not be able to join the chairman and his Republican colleagues in support of this bill today. I want to commend and thank Subcommittee Chairman Babin for his leadership on many important issues facing the commercial space industry that his bill tries to address. However, I have both process and substantive concerns that are too significant for me to look past on this bill. Most concerning, the bill before us today will be considered without the benefit of members having seen and considered the National Space Council-led legislative proposal on authorizing commercial space activities. We knew the proposal was coming. In fact, it was just released this morning. In fact, it was released 45 minutes ago. The Space Council proposal may or may not be the vehicle that we want to move forward. However, I do think it's important that since they worked on the proposal for a year, that we consider and weigh the proposals that are being made. I think ignoring their work would be a mistake. Now, whatever I think of the merits of Mr. Babin's bill, the timing of the markup, as I say, troubles me, and I also have some substantive concerns with what is currently before us, and I will mention some of those as we consider the bill, but that's secondary for today's purposes. Until we have an opportunity, as I say, to read and understand what the administration has created and thoroughly vetted it, it's really impossible to engage in good faith bipartisan negotiations to address the concerns. This bill would likely result in the largest expansion of space regulatory policy since we first began legislating on this topic in the 1980s, and I do think it's important to take our time to work with the National Space Council and our external stakeholders to get it right. I want to be clear. As I said, I'm not rubber stamping the administration's proposal, but I don't think it should be ignored. So I will be respectfully opposing this bill today. However, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that the chairman and his staff have engaged with us on their bill, and as always, I want to thank the chairman and staff for working with us in a transparent and honest fashion. It really is a model for the rest of Congress, even on a day when I will be politely disagreeing with the chairman. I want to thank him for his efforts, and on that note, I yield back the balance of my time.
The chair appreciates very much the ranking member's observations and notes that there are many factors still to be considered before anything goes to the floor. With that, other members are invited to submit their opening statements for the record. Pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 6213, the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 6213, to reauthorize the National Quantum Initiative Act for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized to speak on the underlying bill? The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quantum technologies have the potential to revolutionize industries like medicine and logistics while also giving our servicemen and women a leg up over our adversaries. These technologies are not only developed in a vacuum, and they will not operate in one either. So we need to ensure our researchers are incorporating other cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence and nanotech into the development cycle. We have already seen the disruptive power of AI-powered platforms speeding up labor-intensive processes that are critical to designing new quantum systems like coding. My amendment would ensure that as we look to the next 5 years of the National Quantum Initiative Act, our agencies and their partners have the ability and direction from Congress to utilize these technologies and grow and maintain our competitive edge. I urge the adoption of the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there any other further discussion on the underlying bill? If not, we'll proceed to the amendments in order listed on the roster. The first amendment on the roster is an amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by me. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Lucas of Oklahoma.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I recognize myself to explain the amendment. This amendment in the nature of a substitute, much like the base bill I and Ms. Lofgren introduced several weeks ago, is the product of meaningful, bipartisan, and open, transparent process with stakeholders. This amendment in the nature of a substitute tweaks the legislation to make a strong final product that will strengthen and accelerate our domestic quantum industry. This legislation will ensure U.S. leadership in quantum for decades to come. As I've said before, quantum science, engineering, and technology is going to transform our scientific landscape. Passage of the 2018 National Quantum Initiative Act marked a significant achievement for this committee and set the momentum rolling for a unified national quantum strategy. There is no time to lose that momentum now. Progress needs to continue, and this reauthorization builds off our successes by supporting basic research while looking at how we can move quantum applications forward. It will establish new workforce pathways so more undergraduate and technical school students have exposure to the quantum industry. It authorizes a new quantum foundry, new quantum test beds, and new programs to expand capacity at institutions of higher education who want to build out quantum programs. It will even strengthen international partnerships with U.S. allies to ensure this emerging technology matures in a manner consistent with our democratic values. Finally, it ensures that we have a solid platform to outcompete adversaries like China and Russia, who are hot on our heels in quantum development. It's vital to our national and economic security that this reauthorization be passed into law so that American innovators and researchers can continue their work. I want to thank the ranking member and her staff, my policy staff, our legislative council, and the many stakeholders who provided feedback for working with me to incorporate those important changes. And I'm confident we're on the right path to take our quantum knowledge to the next level, which is why I'm eager to pass this out of committee and to ensure we are building off the last 5 years of the National Quantum Initiative. With that, I yield back and recognize the ranking member.
Thank you. I move to strike the last word and would note that the amendment updates the underlying bill to make not only technical but clarifying changes. I support the amendment, and I urge all of my colleagues to do so as well, and yield back.
If there's no further discussion on this amendment, and since it is an amendment in the oral nature of a substitute, we'll move to and consider the other amendments. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Miller. The clerk will report Miller Amendment number 25.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Mr. Miller of Ohio.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Ohio is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's been a long couple of days for me. I have a newborn, lack of sleep. Apparently, I already offered my amendment earlier, so I am happy to read it again for the full committee, and I'm looking at you, Chairman, for that discretion, but I'm more than happy to.
So you are suggesting it is still a good amendment moments later?
I think it is solid for any member on our side or your side. Let's get it done. Thank you, Aaron, for the claps. I yield back.
Gentleman
Thank
yields
you.
back. Is there any other discussion on the amendment?
Mr.
Ranking
Chairman,
member's recognized.
first, we'd like to offer our congratulations. We did not know about the addition to your family. And also, the amendment does help find synergies among emerging technologies with microelectronics. It's important. We support the amendment, and I urge its passage and yield back.
Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to Miller Amendment number 25. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentlewoman from Ohio, Mrs. Sykes.
Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes the ranking member.
The
clerk will
Oh,
read Sykes Amendment number 51.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213 offered by Ms. Sykes of Ohio.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the ranking member is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Sykes was detained, so I would like to offer her amendment, which is important. It emphasizes that quantum technology and other emerging technologies should also be developed for societal benefit and public health. We've heard a lot about fantastic potential for quantum computing and other quantum technologies, and as they become a reality, we hope that we will explore opportunities for quantum applications across all sectors, especially those sectors that most directly benefit the public. I believe that this amendment has been thoroughly discussed across the aisle and has unanimous and bipartisan support, and I urge its passage and yield back.
The ranking member yields back. The chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. I want to thank Mrs. Sykes for introducing the amendment to expand research areas, the population stakeholders, and focus sectors for quantum programs across agencies. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment. Does anyone else wish to be recognized on the amendment? The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. I am very excited about this amendment from my colleague, our colleague, Congresswoman Sykes. We both represent areas with not only a rich history, but a very rich presence in manufacturing. And I think all of us on this committee know the impacts of supply chain and supply chain constraints. And so this good amendment will help identify key inputs into the supply chain, straining factors, and this will also ensure that our nation is absolutely capitalizing on all quantum has to offer. That includes small businesses, new innovators, entrepreneurs, and it will certainly help make the Midwest shine. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized speaking on the amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the Sykes Amendment number 51. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins. The clerk will report Collins Amendment number 35.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Collins of Georgia.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Georgia is recognized to explain the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, before I get started, though, I just wanted to relay that with all my children, I hope that Mr. Miller's child not only gets his wife's looks, but her brains.
An obvious observation, yes.
Mr. Chairman, as you so eloquently put in your opening statement, the quantum sector is a fast-growing sector in our economy. And to remain not just competitive with China in the long term, we must give opportunities for small businesses to remain competitive, within their own industry. And as a small business owner myself, I understand the importance of technology and how it can change a business from the ground up. And when a business harnesses new and innovative technology, they can change the face of an entire industry. And so now is the time to support small businesses who are investing in quantum computing in order to create this equal playing field. And that's why my amendment is so important. My amendment will require small businesses to be a part of the National Quantum Initiative Advisory Committee. This committee directs the federal government's policies, direction, and research on quantum technology. This amendment also gives small businesses a seat at the table in order to ensure that their voices are heard when the government is making decisions related to quantum policy. It is vital that we make sure small businesses can take advantage of quantum technology to ensure that they can compete in today's economy. And I urge all my colleagues to support this amendment. And with that, sir, I thank you and yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized? The ranking member is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank Mr. Collins for his amendment. This amendment highlights the important role that startups and small or medium-sized businesses play in the quantum ecosystem. We support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes himself for a very brief moment. I want to thank Mr. Collins for offering this important amendment to ensure small businesses and startups can compete as the quantum industry grows. Many of us represent Middle America's innovators who are often left out of the equation or overshadowed by large, well-financed industry leaders on the coast. No offense, ranking member from California. This amendment will ensure that everybody has a seat at the table, and I support this amendment. Encourage my colleagues to vote for it. Yield back. And does any other member seek to be recognized on this amendment? Hearing none, the question is on agreeing to the Collins Amendment number 35. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia. The clerk will report Garcia Amendment number 30.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6123, offered by Mr. Garcia of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from California is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership and for bringing the bill forward and this amendment. We're in an arms race right now with China when it comes to quantum capabilities. We know that this is a domain that the CCP wants to dominate and that their efforts threaten our national security. China is heavily investing in quantum research for use, not only in the private sector, but also the military, as well as their intelligence operations. To that end, it's vital that we are able to rapidly advance our own capabilities to beat them. And in the near future, quantum computing will be used for encryption, code breaking, advanced sensing, and to provide our warfighters with operation solutions on GPS-denied battlefields, just to name a few possibilities. But in order to do this, we need to ensure that we are beating China to the punch. 2,200 years ago, Sun Tzu, in his Art of War, wrote, If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. And if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. My amendment would direct the National Quantum Coordination Office and the National Science and Technology Council to survey our allies as well as our adversaries and report back to Congress on their quantum investments and their advances so that we know not only ourselves, but also what our enemies are doing. This amendment will provide greater clarity as to where we stand in the quantum race and will help direct future federal investments. It will ensure a favorable result in 100 future battles. I want to thank Chairman Lucas again for introducing this much-needed bill and ask for support for the amendment. And I yield back.
The chair recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment does ensure the Interagency Subcommittee on Quantum Information Science will conduct stakeholder outreach and tracks the status of our quantum workforce supply chain and federal investments in quantum technology by other nations. It's a good amendment. We support it, and I yield back.
The ranking member yields back. The chair recognizes himself. In the spirit of brevity, I support the amendment and encourage my colleagues to support it as well, and I yield back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on this amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to Garcia number 30. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Bowman. The clerk will report, Bowman Amendment number 31.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Bowman of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from New York is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by thanking you and Ranking Member Lofgren for introducing this incredibly important piece of legislation. Over the next decade, the importance of quantum sensing, networking, and ultimately computing will only increase. Applications in the physical sciences, software, hardware, finances, and other sectors make this a critical technology to invest in for everyone's benefit. As a lifelong educator, I try to highlight the importance of education every chance we get as we imagine the impact of quantum. That's why this amendment ensures that the Department of Education will have a seat at the table as the Subcommittee on Quantum Information Science is formed. Educators and students from elementary school to PhD must be able to participate in shaping the quantum revolution. Additionally, as we move toward quantum applications and demonstrations at scale, the Department of Energy has a critical role to play in advancing this ecosystem. My amendment ensures that as the DOE conducts cooperative research, quantum data storage will be included as a key focus area that could unlock energy-efficient data centers. This requirement will center important quantum infrastructure development needs that could usher us into the next generation of quantum. I urge my colleagues and ask nicely for my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? I recognize myself. I want to thank Mr. Bowman for offering this amendment to add the Department of Education to the Quantum Interagency Coordinating Body, and I support the amendment and encourage my colleagues to support it as well. Seeing no other member wish to be recognized, hearing no other, the question is agreeing to the Bowman Amendment number 31. All signify by saying in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it. The amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Stevens. The clerk will report Stevens Amendment number 33.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Ms. Stevens of Michigan.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized to explain the amendment.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And obviously, we spend some time on this committee talking about verbiage, and we identified that it would be very important in the text of this legislation to include advanced manufacturing. Some of you might know about the National Network for Manufacturing Innovation, otherwise known as Manufacturing USA, public-private partnerships that were developed well over a decade ago that have carried forward from President Obama's administration to President Trump's administration and now into President Biden's administration. And one of our national institutes that has been focused on quantum technologies located in Rochester, New York, has now expanded to quantum. And in order for quantum to be successful and for this legislation to be successful, we absolutely must be including advanced manufacturing, and frankly, we must be saying the word. So as we look to the next 5 years to set up and support demonstration and commercialization activities to maintain our leadership in this space, this inclusion in the legislation will help us do just that. So I hope all of my colleagues will join me in saying the words advanced manufacturing and support this amendment. Thank you, and I yield.
Gentle lady yields back. Is there any member who wishes to be recognized to speak on the amendment? The gentlewoman from Oregon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak in favor of my colleague, Representative Haley's amendment. I represent the Oregon Manufacturing Innovation Center in Scappoose, Oregon, which is an additive and advanced manufacturing facility. I'm assuming that additive is included in advanced manufacturing, but it's a good amendment. It's important, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the Stevens Amendment number 33. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it. The amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Ross. The clerk will read the Ross Amendment number 62.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Ms. Ross of North Carolina with Mr. Obernolte of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren, for holding this markup on this critically important bipartisan bill. I'm pleased to offer this bipartisan amendment of the version of my bill, the Leveraging Quantum Computing Act. I also want to thank Congressman Obernolte for joining me in offering this amendment. With this developing technology, federal agencies can harness the potential of quantum computing to solve some of our most pressing issues faster and more efficiently. At a moment of unprecedented international competition, the United States cannot afford to fall behind. By taking advantage of quantum computing, this bill will propel our federal agencies forward and ensure our nation can continue to be a global leader in innovation and technology. I'm proud that my home state of North Carolina is already leading in this important field. This legislation will instruct federal agencies to identify potential uses for quantum computing to advance the missions of the participating agencies. I urge all of my colleagues to support the bipartisan amendment and the underlying bill. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Does the gentleman from California wish to be recognized? Mr. Obernolte is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank Congresswoman Ross for offering this amendment. Was proud to co-lead it with her. And I'd also like to commend you, Mr. Chairman, and the ranking member for bringing this excellent bill forward. Quantum computing is going to be a revolutionary game changer in many areas of industry and also in government. But quantum computers are much more than just computers that run faster than traditional computers. And it's often not obvious to industry or particularly to federal agencies how quantum computing can be integrated into their workflows and how it can be used to improve their missions. So that's why this amendment is so important. It requires the National Science Technology Council Subcommittee on Quantum Information Science to establish a program of outreach to federal agencies to help them identify the use cases that quantum can help to solve. Meaningfully, this is not provide any more funding. It's not an expansion of any government mandate. The the federal agencies involved would be responsible for acting themselves on the recommendations of the council. But I think it's very important to point out those cases, those use cases, and point out the ways that quantum computing can be used to advance the missions of these federal agencies. So I'm proud to support the amendment. Thank you, Congresswoman Ross, for bringing it forward, and I urge its adoption. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Does anyone else, member, wish to be recognized on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is agreeing to the Ross Amendment number 62. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Baird. The clerk shall report Baird Amendment number 21.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Baird of Indiana.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Indiana is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about this amendment, which really asks for a study of the feasibility of construction of a national quantum communications corridor. I think that's going to be important in terms of coordinating the efforts of different agencies. And so their first report that's required after this is enacted is to have the advisory committee assess the advisability and the feasibility of establishing a quantum communications corridor in which federal laboratories, institutions of higher education, and other entities conducting quantum information science, engineering, and technology research are connected via a quantum communications network capable of rapidly and securely transmitting large quantities of information. And that's the amendment, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank Representative Baird for this amendment to assess the feasibility of a quantum communications corridor as a secured communication line among parties conducting quantum information research. It's a good amendment. I support it, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the Baird Amendment number 21. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jackson. The clerk will report Jackson Amendment number 28.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Jackson of North Carolina and Ms. Tenney of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from North Carolina is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Lucas, and thank you to Congresswoman Tenney for joining me on this. It was previously a standalone bill. The issue is just that one of the major concerns with quantum technology is that once we achieve it, all of our passwords become obsolete. That it will become powerful enough to crack all passwords through all existing protocols for the formation and construction of passwords. It's one of the major medium-term concerns when it comes to quantum technology. NIST has led the charge in figuring out how to guard against this. They have created a set of cybersecurity standards that exist to be effective in a post-quantum password environment. However, there are a range of organizations that need to begin adopting these standards, and they haven't done that yet. So what this amendment would do is instruct NIST to start working with all of the organizations that need to begin adopting these standards. In short, this would help us start getting ready for a security environment in which quantum technology has made security much more difficult. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does the gentlelady from New York seek to be recognized to speak on her amendment? The gentlelady is
Yes,
recognized
Mr.
for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Lofgren, for holding this markup on the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act and Commercial Space Act. The quantum computing era is officially upon us. Unlike traditional computing, which requires operations to perform sequentially, quantum computing will allow us to perform calculations exponentially faster. As we enter this new age in computing, it is vital to our government that our government takes proactive measures to anticipate the future challenges that this technology will create. Encryption plays a pivotal role in protecting everything from banking transactions and our text messages to our national security and military assets. Although it's an incredible technology, soon quantum computing will jeopardize nearly all modern-day encryption computing capabilities. Quantum computer, as my co-lead, Mr. Jackson, just referenced. Quantum computers will be able to crack standard 128-bit or even 256-bit encryption with ease, posing massive risk to national security and our broader economy. My amendment, which I'm co-honored to lead with Representative Jeff Jackson of North Carolina, will modernize current encryption standards by requiring the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, to adopt post-quantum cryptology rules. This will prepare our nation for the next generation of quantum computing and protect some of our most critical industries from cyber threats. This amendment reinforces our commitment to ensuring that our data remains encrypted in a post-quantum world while supporting research in the United States to ensure we maintain our leadership in the field of cybersecurity. Some of the most cutting-edge research being done on this topic is happening near my own district, formerly my district. The U.S. Air Force Research Lab Directorate in Rome, New York, otherwise known as Rome Lab, is one of the many federal facilities conducting critical quantum computing research that is needed to modernize our country's cybersecurity. This amendment is a crucial first step to support our critical infrastructure, national security, economic interests, and privacy needs from emerging threats. I encourage all my colleagues to support this amendment and the underlying bill. And again, I thank the gentleman from North Carolina for co-leading this with me, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank both Mr. Jackson and Ms. Tenney for this amendment. You know, cybersecurity is always a race. We have encryption, the hackers break it, we do better, they break it again. We always need to be ahead of the game. When you look at cyber coupled with AI, we have some of the biggest risks we've ever faced in terms of encryption. So this is a very important amendment. In fact, it may be a first step after NIST does their work, but I want to thank the two members for this amendment. It's very important. I support it, and I yield back.
The ranking member yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the Jackson Amendment number 28. All in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentlewoman from Ohio, Mrs. Sykes. The clerk will report Sykes Amendment number 49.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Ms. Sykes of Ohio.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentlelady, Ms. Stevens, will be recognized to explain the amendment.
We all remember where we were when the COVID-19 shutdown hit. We remember what it was like with supply chains being disrupted, hospitals running short on supplies, basic PPE goods to ventilators. It was catastrophe. And those of us here on the Science Committee, Dr. Baird and myself, assembled what actually became the first remote hearing. It wasn't a scheduled hearing, but it was the trappings of a hearing to talk about open source supply chains. How could a country as innovative and successful as ours not be able to connect the dots in this moment? So now, looking to this legislation, this incredible legislation that we have here for the Quantum Initiative, we have to include supply chain vulnerabilities, not just if another pandemic hits our shores, but if we have cybersecurity disruptions, other national security disruptions, and on. We have got to take supply chain vulnerabilities seriously, and quantum can help us do that. And this is why Ms. Sykes' amendment is so critical to this legislation. I'm thrilled to introduce it on behalf of her, and I ask my colleagues to join me in supporting it. Thank you.
The gentlelady yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on this amendment? I recognize myself for 5 minutes. I want to thank Ms. Sykes and Mr. Crawford for introducing their bill, H.R. 6207, and offering it as an amendment. The amendment will reduce the quantum supply chain vulnerabilities and ensure we develop a robust domestic supply to support our quantum technology development. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment. Does any other member wish to be recognized on this amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the Sykes Amendment number 49. All in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Crawford. The clerk will report Crawford Amendment Number 61.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Crawford of Arkansas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Arkansas is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the United States continues to compete for global leadership in quantum information science, engineering, and technology, we must prevent malign foreign actors from infiltrating sensitive research, especially those with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. My amendment will place a new section under each subtitle requiring agencies to conduct their activities authorized in this bill consistent with the research security provisions incorporated in the CHIPS and Science Act. This includes prohibiting research grantees from being members of a malign foreign talent program, prohibiting federal agency personnel from participating in foreign talent recruitment program, and requiring individuals meaningfully involved in a funded research project to disclose if they are party to a foreign talent recruitment program. For the sake of our national security, we can't allow federally funded quantum research to fall into the hands of foreign actors with ill intentions. Last week, this same amendment was introduced during the Weather Act reauthorization markup and passed by voice vote with overwhelming bipartisan support. I urge my colleagues to once again support this common sense amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on this amendment? Seeing none. Hearing none, I should say, the question on is agreeing to the Crawford Amendment Number 61. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it. The amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Sorensen. The clerk shall report Mr. Sorensen's amendment number 28.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Sorensen of Illinois.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Illinois is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. As ranking member of the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee, let me begin by saying that I'm pleased to see NASA formally included among the federal agencies carrying out work on quantum in this bill. And I look forward to learning more about what benefits quantum research and applications might offer for space and aeronautics. I've heard from universities in Illinois that some undergraduate students who are offered scholarships may be unable to accept them due to financial aid factors. The student must report the funding associated with the scholarship or fellowship as income, which might drop them into a lower financial aid bracket and could result in them having to take out a loan. The amendment that I offer today will ensure that more students can access funding authorized in this bill by creating cooperative opportunities in addition to scholarships and fellowships. This additional option helps ensure that all students can benefit from the bill we are considering today. I urge adoption of this common sense amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. I want to thank Mr. Sorensen for introducing this amendment, and I encourage my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is on agreeing to the Sorensen Amendment number 28. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Baird. The clerk will report Baird Amendment number 22.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Baird of Indiana.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Indiana is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. This amendment simply adds language to Section 13 of the bill to authorize research experiences for teachers, RET for short, R-E-T, in quantum-related fields. And if we're going to make progress, we're going to have individuals that are experienced and can be a trained workforce. And so it asks the director of the National Science Foundation to seek to increase opportunities to engage educators, principals, and other leaders from K through 12 students in professional learning opportunities to enhance quantum information science, engineering, technology, and including providing hands-on training and research opportunities for such educators at federal laboratories, institutions of higher learning, or in the industry. So that's the main essence of this amendment, and with that I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member.
Mr. Chairman, this is a good amendment. I always think that quantum really is counterintuitive, and to the extent that we can expose teachers and K-12 students, we're getting ahead of the game. I thank the gentleman for his amendment, and I support it and yield back.
Does any other member wish to be recognized, speak on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is on agreeing to the Baird Amendment number 22. All in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentlewoman from Oklahoma, Ms. Bice. The clerk will report Bice Amendment number 48.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Ms. Bice of Oklahoma.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. The gentlewoman from Oklahoma is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment would authorize the National Science Foundation to provide awards to support mid-career scientists and faculty so that they may begin new or expand existing research activities that are focused on quantum information science, engineering, and technology. At a time where adversarial nations like China and Russia are heavily invested in developing of quantum systems, the U.S., along with strategic allies, must be at the forefront of this global race. These ongoing activities at NSF under the Mid-Career Advancement Program would allow important new opportunities of engagement for quantum-specific areas. The MCA program provides the resources for scientists and engineers at a critical point in the mid-career stage to improve and progress upon their research and aid in the advancement of operational quantum systems. Additional program opportunities like this will strengthen participation in an essential quantum workforce and lead to breakthroughs that will benefit all facets of life. I urge support of this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an important amendment that faces the unique challenges faced by mid-career scientists, including balancing research, advising, teaching, service workloads. It's important that we support mid-career scientists in advancing their research. This amendment helps do that. We support it, and I yield back.
Does any other member, gentlelady yields back, does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is on agreeing to Bice Amendment number 48. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it. The amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Kane. The clerk will report Kane Amendment number 30.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Kane of New Jersey and Ms. McClellan of Virginia.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the amendment. Unfortunately, Representative Kane is currently chairing a House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee hearing, so I will offer this amendment on his behalf, and I want to thank Representative Kane along with Representative McClellan for their leadership in introducing H.R. 6348. The Expanding Capacity in Quantum Information Sciences, Engineering, and Technology Act. This amendment will add H.R. 6348 to the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization and in turn authorize activities at the National Science Foundation to expand research, education, and infrastructure capacity at institutions across the U.S. This amendment will increase participation in the field of quantum information science, engineering, and technology and help secure the longevity of our domestic quantum enterprise by preparing our workforce for the needs of industry, government, and academia. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back and recognize the gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. McClellan.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am glad to join Mr. Keene in offering the Expand QUISET Act as an amendment. I represent Virginia's 4th Congressional District, which is home to 2 HBCUs, Virginia Union University and Virginia State University. These institutions and many other like them have long performed exceptional work to ensure underrepresented communities can pursue careers in STEM research. To achieve our goal of broadening participation in STEM, it is critical that we enable students at our HBCUs, MSIs, and emerging research institutions to have access to experimental learning opportunities in these new technologies. This amendment will help build that capacity for many of our local research and educational communities to be able to participate in quantum information science, engineering, and technology research. With every step we take to establish a more diverse quantum workforce, we can better secure a quantum talent pipeline that meets the growing needs of industry and provides economic growth in communities across the nation. I ask that you support this amendment to make sure that talented young Americans in all of our states have the opportunity to participate in the development of quantum technology. And I thank Mr. Keene for sponsoring this amendment and my colleagues for your work on this important legislation, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an important amendment expanding the capacity in quantum research and education everywhere, including institutions that don't typically have the same level of access to federal research funds. The amendment supports post-baccalaureate bridge programs, and I wanted to note that San Jose State University in my own district has been a leader in the Cal Bridge program that merits and mirrors this amendment. That supports historically underrepresented groups in STEM, including women, to enter top PhD programs at the University of California campuses or other top universities around the country. It's a fantastic model for increasing the talent pipeline. I urge the support of this amendment and yield back. Yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does the gentleman wish to speak on his amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I take great pride in having introduced H.R. 6384, the Expanding Capacity in Quantum Information Science, Engineering, and Technology Act, with my colleague, Ms. McClellan. This amendment would add H.R. 6384 to the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization, and in turn, authorize vital activities of the National Science Foundation to expand research, education, and infrastructure capacity at universities across the U.S. By expanding participation in quantum information sciences, this amendment ensures we strengthen our domestic quantum capabilities. Investing and working with academia are paramount for reinforcing our leadership in this cutting-edge technology. Through a commitment to education and robust infrastructure, we position ourselves to attract and cultivate a skilled workforce necessary to propel U.S. advancement in the field. This approach solidifies our leadership in this field and underscores our dedication to innovation and progress. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is on agreeing to the Kane Amendment number 30. All in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it. The amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentlelady from Oregon, Ms. Salinas. The clerk will report Salinas Amendment number 36.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Ms. Salinas of Oregon and Mr. Baird from Indiana.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentlelady from Oregon will be recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Chair Lucas and Ranking Member Lofgren, for holding today's markup. Quantum science has the potential to transform many of today's critical technologies, improving computing speeds and making communications more secure. This legislation will help secure the United States' position as the global leader in quantum research and development for decades to come. I want to thank Mr. Baird for working with me to ensure that researchers can take full advantage of these investments. Our amendment, the Quantum Instrumentation for Science and Engineering Act, would improve access to research resources, such as equipment and instrumentation, to enable cutting-edge quantum research. It also builds the quantum workforce by encouraging universities to collaborate with community and technical colleges to provide meaningful hands-on learning experiences for their students. I was so pleased to receive the endorsement of the University of Oregon, Oregon State University, and in my district, the Oregon Institute of Technology, which is working to create a quantum computing innovation center and exploring the intersection of quantum computing and artificial intelligence. I look forward to seeing how they work together with public and private partners in the region to maximize these resources and make the Willamette Valley a hub for quantum science and industry. Breakthroughs in quantum science will lead to faster drug development, better clean energy technologies, and improved climate modeling, helping us tackle some of the society's biggest challenges. So I want to thank again my colleagues for your work on this important legislation, and I ask that you support this bipartisan amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes himself. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back. The gentlelady from Oregon wishes to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to align myself with the comments of my colleague, Representative Salinas, also from Oregon. This is an important amendment that will improve the underlying legislation, especially with its focus on upgrading research equipment and improving coordination and building the quantum workforce. It's a good amendment, and I encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support it, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on the amendment? The gentleman, Mr. Zinke, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To be consistent, go Ducks.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized, speak on the amendment?
Yes, sir. To be extremely consistent, go Beavers. Thank you.
Hearing no more, the question is on agreeing to Salinas Amendment number 36. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it. The amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Obernolte. The clerk will report Obernolte Amendment number 50.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Obernolte of California with Ms. Haley Stevens.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from California is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A very important part of this bill is the grant program that's established to support the development of quantum test beds. This amendment makes some small but very important changes to the eligibility criteria for that grant program. First of all, it sets a maximum of 5 awardees under the program. That's important because if we have too many awardees, there's not going to be enough money in the program to actually support the development of any test bed. So this setting a maximum of 5 would guarantee that at least $10 million was available to each awardee, so that's important. Also, the amendment enacts the prioritization of applications that include a substantial cost sharing. I think that that's just basic good governance, make sure that people have some skin in the game and bring their own resources to the table. That's consistent with other grant programs that we've established. The amendment also sets a maximum of 1 year to get that grant program up and operating. I think that's important because we want to make sure that this gets done quickly. So these are common sense amendments. I'd like to thank my co-lead on this, Congresswoman Stevens, for her partnership, and respectfully urge the adoption of our amendment.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized, speak on the amendment? The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say it was a delight to work with Mr. Obernolte on this amendment, just as it was to work with him on some of the underlying components in this bill, particularly quantum sandbox, near-term applications. He is spot on about how we can utilize NSF to award some of these test bed dollars. The requirements are exactly what we need to be doing to ensure that quantum is awarded and successful in the legislation and within the agency on hand. So encourage all my colleagues to support the amendment. And again, thank you, Mr. Obernolte. Great to work with you.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on the amendments? Hearing none, the question is agreeing on the Obernolte Amendment number 50. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The last amendment on the roster, and I stress last amendment on the roster, is H.R. 6213, is offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Babin. The clerk will report Babin Amendment number 39.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6213, offered by Mr. Babin of Texas with Ms. Ross of North Carolina.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Texas is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is simple. It will require the Department of Energy to conduct research, development, and demonstration activities on the use of quantum applications and quantum computing to enhance the resilience, security, and efficiency of the U.S. electric grid. During emergencies, it is imperative that our grids have the ability to process inputs and outputs efficiently and solve optimization problems quickly. Given the increase in energy demand, our current supercomputers face computationally complex challenges. I believe that quantum computing has the potential to assist in managing and optimizing the U.S. electric grid and to make it more resilient. I've introduced this bill as a bill alongside Congresswoman Ross from North Carolina, and I'm very pleased to see it included here today as an amendment. Thank you, Congresswoman Ross. Appreciate it. Thanks for your partnership, and thank Chairman Lucas and Ranking Member Lofgren for your leadership in the National Quantum Initiative Reauthorization Act.
And so with that, I urge all my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Ross, to explain the amendment also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much to Congressman Babin. This is a crucial amendment. We've all seen how much support our grid needs, particularly during extreme weather events. I commend the amendment to you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank both members for this amendment, and in addition to the vulnerability to extreme weather, our grid needs help. We're moving forward with alternative energy sources, non-polluting energy sources, and the grid doesn't actually have the capacity to accept that energy. This is hugely important. I support the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is agreeing to the Babin Amendment number 39. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. There were no other amendments pre-filed for this bill. Does any member wish to offer an amendment at this time? Hearing none, there will be a vote on the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. Pursuant to House Rule 2F and House Rule 11, further proceedings on this bill will be postponed. I would announce to my colleagues that we'll recess now for votes, and we'll reconvene immediately following the last of the vote series on the floor, approximately shortly after noon, I would suspect. And then we'll have a vote on final on quantum, and we'll proceed to commercial space. We're in recess. The House Science, Space, and Technology Committee will come to order. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 6131, the Commercial Space Act of 2023. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 6131, an amendment. To amend Title 51 United States Code to update government oversight of commercial space activities and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open for amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized to speak on the underlying bill? The chair recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you, Chairman Lucas, and thanks to the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee Chairman, Mr. Babin, for your work on this bill. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I had a few concerns with the underlying bill, and I wanted to highlight just a few. The bill being considered establishes a new certification approach for authorization and supervision of U.S. non-governmental space objects. While a strong effort, I'm concerned the bill's certification approach may miss the mark. It limits which international obligations would be considered in a certification process and gives sole authority to the Secretary of Commerce on whether and how such international obligations are met. There's no interagency review or process that explicitly allows agencies other than the Department of Commerce to raise concerns about a certified activity. What this approach does is freeze any other key federal space agencies, including the Department of Defense, NASA, and the intelligence community, out of the ability to raise concerns about U.S. non-governmental space objects being authorized before they are authorized. In other words, there's nothing in the bill that explicitly allows for protecting national security interests as part of the certification process or U.S. foreign policy or national interests. I'm also concerned about how the bill deals with another very consequential issue, which is orbital debris. The bill would require an orbital debris mitigation plan as part of a certification application, but I think there's some oversight here around this. Anything that could exacerbate the already significant risks of orbital debris puts our use and other nations' use of space at risk. And further, the bill appears to undo the effort and progress currently underway at the Department of Commerce to develop a civil space situational awareness capability that leverages both commercial and government input to provide free, basic SSA services and information to space operators. Instead, the bill proposes to turn over those functions, including collision notification alerts, to a non-governmental consortium. There's no guarantee that there will be free basic SSA services, no apparent ability for the consortium to lead international government-to-government coordination on space situational awareness, and no obvious ability for a consortium to directly leverage internal federal government expertise on SSA. The committee has held several hearings and done significant work on space situational awareness, and the SSA proposal in this bill, I think, fails to reflect all of those inputs that we got. Finally, the bill attempts to place, I think, problematic limitations on potential international non-binding agreements that don't exist. In closing, I share the majority's desire to advance commercial space and provide clarity on authorities, roles, and responsibilities. But in addition to my previously stated concerns about timing and process, I wanted to highlight some of the other substantive concerns about the underlying bill. I hope we can continue to have discussions on this topic now that the National Space Council has released their proposal this morning. I'd very much like to get consensus agreement on this before the bill comes to the floor. I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Absolutely. The ranking member yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Babin, to speak to the underlying bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to sponsor H.R. 6131, the Commercial Space Act of 2023. This important legislation builds on years of work at this committee. The base text of this bill stems directly from the American Space Commerce Act and Free Enterprise Act, which passed both this committee and the House by voice vote in 2018. I'm proud of the work that went into developing this legislation. We engaged in an open and transparent process that incorporated a wide range of suggestions, edits, and feedback from stakeholders. I want to thank the many people who engaged with us in a constructive process that resulted in the bill that we are considering today. I want to be clear about the intent of this legislation. We have an international obligation under the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 to authorize and supervise non-governmental activities in space, and this bill does just that. While multiple administrations have reaffirmed that we currently satisfy our obligations, we could do so in a much more transparent and efficient manner. Rather than forcing applicants to go to dozens and dozens of different governmental agencies, departments, and offices with no hard timelines or understanding of the approval criteria, the goal of this legislation is to create a streamlined and transparent process. The intent is to establish a structure to meet our international obligations with the lightest touch possible rather than pushing space companies overseas to a more favorable regulatory environment. This legislation does so by placing reasonable timelines on certification applications and providing a transparent review process in the event a certification is rejected. Also, this legislation incentivizes space operators to adopt standards and best practices to limit orbital debris and responsibly operate and decommission their space objects. These are reasonable steps that take into consideration the thorough interagency and international process used to develop the orbital debris mitigation standard practices, as well as input provided by the commercial sector. The bill also encourages the development of new standards and best practices to guide novel activities and to ensure U.S. leadership. We heard the concerns from stakeholders about the potential for additional burdensome and harmful regulations on commercial human spaceflight. And that's why this bill extends the learning period for an additional 8 years to allow for continued innovation and progress in this area, which will allow for additional time for the sector to continue learning as new vehicles come online and new companies begin launching. And while the sector has finally started to see an increase in human spaceflight launches after decades of continued development, we are only at the very beginning of learning how to operate and have only seen a small number of different spacecraft launch. We took steps to address the issue of space situational awareness in this bill. The bill establishes a public-private partnership consortium operating under the supervision of the Office of Space Commerce to bring together a variety of stakeholder perspectives to ensure that we are managing this important topic in a balanced and cost-effective approach. Building on the success of previous partnerships like the Space Data Association and the Space Safety Coalition, the bill allows for the procurement of commercial space situational awareness data and services, a mechanism for operators to contribute their own data to enhance conjunction analysis and contributions from other government agencies. It would also prevent the development of duplicative and redundant government capabilities and limit bureaucracy. This bill addresses all of these topics while also returning the Office of Space Commerce to its appropriately authorized position of reporting directly to the Secretary of Commerce rather than being buried within NOAA. In addition to updating the Office of Space Commerce, the bill also recognizes the unique expertise that NASA has related to research on space situational awareness, orbital debris, and astrodynamics, some of which occurs at Johnson Space Center in my own district. The bill establishes an institute at NASA to coordinate research on these topics with the academic, commercial, and nonprofit sectors and transfer that research to other agencies and the private sector. This committee is mindful that commercial space activities have increased rapidly in recent years, including the number of launches. This bill engages in common sense reforms to help ease the burden on FAA's ability to license launches by clarifying that these activities fall within the sole responsibility of the Office of Space Commerce. We are attempting to make the approval for commercial space activities as simple as possible And while we cannot create a one-stop shop for commercial space companies, we can streamline the approval process as much as possible while ensuring the U.S. maintains a safe space environment. I again want to thank everyone who took the time and the effort to submit thoughtful feedback and suggestions. I look forward to continuing to work with my fellow members of this committee and to the stakeholders as we move forward in this process. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on the underlying bill? I believe the gentleman, Mr. Sorensen, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Lucas. I am the proud son of an aerospace engineer who, as a kid, my dad supported the space shuttle program. So space is in my blood. But I'll be brief. I support the commercial space industry, and I'm proud of aerospace companies in my district and around our country that work with both NASA and other companies in the commercial space sector. This bill does important work. However, I share the concerns of Ranking Member Lofgren. We know that the Biden administration has spent a year working on a legislative proposal regarding commercial space that was just released this morning. I second calls to hold on today's commercial space legislation until we have an opportunity to consider both approaches to these important commercial space policy matters. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the underlying bill? If there's no further discussion on the underlying bill, we'll proceed with amendments in the order listed at the roster. The first amendment on the roster is Posey Amendment Number 55. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 6131, offered by Mr. Posey of Florida.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Florida is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Lucas. My amendment updates the administrative authority section of the bill by replacing magistrate with a judge of a court exercising judicial power under Article 3. The amended language directs the Secretary to obtain a warrant from Article 3 judge before executing certain authorities granted under this section. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The ranking member seeks to be recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strongly oppose this amendment, and let me say why. You know, magistrates operate in every district court in the United States. You know, I had thought about making a point of order about this amendment, but decided that would just be a frolic and detour. Much better to just talk about the merits. It is a divergence from the practice. I'm not aware of any other situation where the Congress has directed Article 3 judges that they may not use a magistrate. And in fact, magistrates are used for warrants everywhere. And normally, Article 3 judges can review warrants when they're challenged. I do think that the expertise on judicial reform does not rest in the Science Committee. And I note that our colleague, Mr. Issa, is not here, but he chairs the Courts and Intellectual Property Subcommittee and the Judiciary Committee. I serve on that committee, and I think we would be well served to get the input from that committee, because this is really not something, in my view, the Science Committee ought to be doing, and also, in my view, it's not something that the Congress ought to be doing at all. Independent judges are well able to manage their courtrooms. Magistrates play a key role in the orderly administration of justice. They routinely issue warrants in every single state and every single court. And I think this is amendment, although I'm sure offered with the best of intentions, is unwise, and I strongly oppose it. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? The gentlelady from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Lofgren. I'm going to respectfully oppose this amendment by my colleague, Mr. Posey. First, I agree with Ranking Member Lofgren that this is more of an issue that should be addressed by the Judiciary Committee, but I also agree with Ranking Member Lofgren on the merits. This amendment would require an Article 3 judge rather than a magistrate to handle a search warrant request. Magistrates typically handle search warrant requests, and there's no reason why it should differ in this bill. It is a time-consuming task, so I respectfully submit that if you're adding to the already full workload of Article 3 judges, then I would add a recommendation that Congress add more Article 3 judges. And unless you're ready to do that, I recommend that we vote against the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I want to thank Mr. Posey for offering his amendment. As he explained, in the event of a certification holder violates the terms of their certification and the Secretary seeks to exercise its authority to seize related materials, this amendment changes the type of judge from whom the Secretary must obtain a warrant from a magistrate to a judge of a court established under Article 3 of the Constitution. I support the amendment. I encourage my colleagues to support it, and I would yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for edification, this is consistent. Well, actually, this section in the bill is the exact language that currently exists in Title 51 for commercial remote sensing process, which passed in 1992, and it was referred to this committee only. Yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the Posey Amendment number 55. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it. And the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Keene. The clerk will call the Keene Amendment number 33.
Amendment to H.R. 6131, offered by Mr. Kane of New Jersey.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from New Jersey is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment today refines the space situational awareness provision in the underlying legislation, recognizing the importance of executing Space Policy Directive 3 efficiently. It's crucial that we assign civil space situational awareness responsibilities to the Department of Commerce. The Office of Space Commerce has been actively progressing in this direction, and it's essential that we provide the necessary support to empower and ensure the success of this transition. By bolstering their efforts, we are actively contributing to the sustained leadership of the United States in the exploration of the next frontier. We need to establish clear guardrails that define the parameters of the service. This clarity is essential so we may incentivize further innovation within the United States, securing our position as a global leader in space technology. This approach not only fosters a robust space economy, but also ensures the safety and sustainability of our activities in space. By entrusting the Department of Commerce with this responsibility of space situational awareness, we leverage their expertise for managing objects in space safely and transparently. I look forward to working with the chairman to make a few technical amendments to this bill, and until that time, I will withdraw this amendment at this time.
The gentleman yields back. I recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I want to thank Mr. Kane for his attention to the very important topic of space situational awareness. We both understand that a proper approach to space situational awareness is critical to enabling continued growth and innovation in the United States space activities. I believe with continued collaboration, the concepts Mr. Kane's amendment ultimately will complement the approach set forth in Dr. Babin's bill, and I thank him for his leadership on the topic, and will work with him to move forward with the consideration. And as noted by my ranking member, this is a work in progress still. I yield back, and seeing no other member, Mr. Kane's amendment is withdrawn. Next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Mullen. The clerk will report Mullen amendment number 16.
Amendment to H.R. 6131, offered by Mr. Mullen of California and Mr. McCormick of Georgia.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from California is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am pleased to join my majority colleague, Mr. McCormick of Georgia, in offering an amendment to H.R. 6131. Our amendment would require the Office of Space Commerce, jointly with NASA, to submit a report to Congress on space-based solar power. The report would incorporate and build upon the important work NASA is currently doing to study this technology and its feasibility,
and it would go further by evaluating commercial viability, outlining international agreements or cooperation that would be needed to deploy and maintain the technology in orbit, and detailing the investments and progress countries are making towards space-based solar power's practical and commercial viability. Our clean energy future requires an all-hands-on-deck approach to researching and advancing new game-changing technologies. As we are laying the course of the future of commercial space activity, Congress should gather information about potential ways power can be generated in space in a commercially viable way. The United States should be at the forefront of this revolutionary field. As a legislative body, we should be able to learn more about being able to make informed decisions about what might be needed to make this game-changing technology not just scientifically possible, but also viable commercially at scale. Please join Representative McCormick and me in this effort. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Would the gentleman from Georgia seek to be recognized to discuss the amendment?
I would, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chairman Lucas. I want to thank my colleague, Representative Mullen of California, and his staff for working with my office to craft this amendment. As countries worldwide work to tackle their energy consumption needs, solar energy from space may be part of that solution. I know it sounds like science fiction, but the research to fully develop this technology is already being done today. Despite the 24% average annual growth of solar energy over the past decade, our current technology can only capture a fraction of the energy reaching Earth. Roughly 30% of the sun's energy is reflected back into space by Earth's atmosphere. Solar panel satellites are placed in orbit to capture and collect the sun's energy in space. This space-based energy could then be beamed down to a receiver, and that application could be revolutionary to what we do here on Earth. The energy beamed down to Earth could be integrated into the electrical grid to power homes and communities, including rural and remote areas, and it could even power locations where power grids have failed or in a town decimated by natural disasters. The national security-related terrestrial applications could provide a potential resource of uninterrupted energy to power mobile receivers that could be moved to difficult-to-access places such as forward-operating military bases, providing our warfare fighters the resources they need to bring the fight to a potential war zone. The truly fascinating application would be beaming down the space energy to power other satellites or objects in orbit, cislunar orbit or beyond, allowing spacecraft to move to another position or out into the void to explore the depths of space. This technology is coming, and the United States should be paving the way for the research and development. Our adversaries and allies worldwide are spending billions of dollars working to develop this type of technology, and we should not fall behind. This is why I'm happy to introduce this amendment with my colleague, Congressman Mullen. Our amendment would require the Office of Space Commerce, jointly with NASA, to submit a report to Congress about the commercial viability of the space-based solar power. This report would help provide a better understanding of what steps need to be taken to create more advanced solar technology that could benefit our country and perhaps the world as well. This report will add to the findings and recommendations from the long overdue report NASA will hopefully be releasing soon. I urge my colleagues to support the adoption of this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? The ranking member is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank both of the members who have advanced this amendment. I think it's a good amendment, and I support it and yield back.
I wholeheartedly agree with the ranking member. Does anyone else seek to be recognized? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the Mullen Amendment number 16. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. They do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. McCormick. The clerk will report McCormick Amendment number 115.
Amendment to H.R. 6131, offered by Mr. McCormick of Georgia.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from Georgia is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The underlying bill, sponsored by my friend Dr. Babin, makes a tremendous strides in supporting and encouraging growth of our commercial space industry. My amendment adds to the great work in the bill by addressing space situational awareness and the relationship between the federal government and the commercial space industry. Space is the final frontier. Since the dawn of humankind, humans have sought to be part of the heavens and to understand their place in the universe. Nothing has changed. It is vital that we know what is up there and where it is for national security and economic reasons, or objects will start colliding and our adversaries could get the upper hand by making collisions even on purpose. Under the Space Policy Directive 3, the transition of space situational awareness capabilities from the Department of Defense to the Office of Space Commerce has been slow and delayed in its process, and the original intent needs to be the focus. Space Command requested that the customer service-related responsibilities be removed from their plate so they could focus on the threats and their warfighting mission. Allowing the more private sector-focused Department of Commerce to take over the communication responsibilities simply makes sense. During this transition, it is important for the Office of Space Commerce to use commercial data partners for modeling and fusion capabilities needed for space situational awareness. As Earth's orbit becomes more crowded, we need to be vigilant to ensure that Congress and the federal government are taking the right approach to tackle these problems into the future. Clear and concise coordination and communication with the commercial space industry is imperative to future success and preventing orbital chaos. My amendment today seeks to study how best to tackle these challenges and keep Space Policy Directive 3 on track. The plan the White House released today is an example of the misguided and poorly thought out policies that will only harm our fledgling space industry's incredible potential. I want to give special thanks to the committee staff for working with my office to create this amendment, and I ask my colleagues to support the adoption of my amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate and share the representative's interest in the growing problem of orbital debris, which is a threat to the safety and sustainability of space for everyone, from the public to the private sector, and obviously not just to the United States, but globally. However, this morning, the administration just released its legislative proposal on commercial space authorities, which includes space situational awareness. Now, we're just starting to review their proposal. It appears that the concept in this amendment for a study on space situational awareness and the administration's proposal stand in contrast. I'll just reiterate, I don't necessarily assume that the administration's proposal is superior, but I do think we need to consider both options before taking action. I want to thank the gentleman for working on this. For the reasons I've noted, I cannot support it at this time. Hopefully we will, between now and the floor, have an opportunity to gain consensus. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The ranking member yields back. I recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I want to thank Mr. McCormick for offering the amendment. He and I both recognize establishing the proper space situational awareness notifications will enable operators of all kinds to better coordinate their space activities and to navigate the space domain. I also commend his amendment's focus on how best to integrate commercial providers into future space situational awareness activities, and I thank him for his work on the amendment and urge my colleagues to join me in supporting it and yield back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on this amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the McCormick Amendment number 115. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it. The amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia. The clerk will report Garcia Amendment 28.
Amendment to H.R. 6131, offered by Mr. Garcia of California and Mr. Miller of Ohio.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from California is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Chairman Babin for his leadership on the underlying bill. My amendment would express a sense of Congress that the DoD and FAA should establish a single approval process for commercial space reentry activity at federal test ranges. Currently, these departments require commercial operators to go through duplicative licensing and approval processes that only serve to create confusion and to slow the cadence of operations. There's a significant barrier to the expansion of our commercial space sector, and a uniform process would ensure that the FAA and DoD are coordinating to encourage safe reentry operations with a more rapid cadence. We should be looking far and wide for opportunities to remove duplicative requirements, to remove barriers for the still young industry, and that's exactly what my amendment does. I want to thank Congressman Miller for his input in support of the amendment, and I urge colleagues to support and yield back.
Does the gentleman from Ohio wish to
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would.
discuss the amendment?
Very briefly, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Babin, for your underlying support as well. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I just want to echo Mr. Garcia's comments, emphasizing the importance of removing duplicative processes and urge the adoption of the amendment. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank Mr. Garcia for his amendment. I agree with the goals of the amendment. It's important that we avoid duplicative requirements for industry conducting space operations at federal agencies, ranges, and that we begin to address and consider the emerging area of commercial reentry operations as we continue to enable growth and success in U.S. commercial space activities. I support the amendment and encourage my colleagues to support it as well. I yield back.
The ranking member yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized on the amendment? Hearing no others, the question is on agreeing to the Garcia Amendment number 28. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it. The amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia. The clerk will report Garcia Amendment number 29.
Amendment to H.R. 6131, offered by Mr. Garcia of California and Ms. Stevens of Michigan.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman from California is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman. Time and time again, commercial space operators have come to my office with effectively the same complaint, that the licensing process is too slow and that the FAA is too understaffed to handle the approval process. My bipartisan amendment would make important reforms to the licensing process to allow for expedited approval without sacrificing safety standards, while operators transition to Part 450 processes. Specifically, my amendment would allow the FAA to waive a licensing requirement if it determines that it is in the public interest and would not threaten public health or safety. It also sets a 70 or 60-day shot clock for the Secretary to make a waiver determination. My amendment would also require that the Secretary approve or deny a request for any modification of a previously approved license within 30 days if the operator is only making a minor change to the application. Removing unnecessary requirements is a common-sense solution to support our space industry and to go faster. My amendment would also establish a pilot program to study the benefits of allowing the FAA to contract with other government agencies to assist in reviewing launch applications. We all know that the FAA's Office of Commercial Space Transportation is severely understaffed and struggling to hire needed personnel. My amendment would allow the FAA to acquire the services of a qualified expert firm from other government agencies, such as the Air Force, to expedite application reviews. This pilot program will expire after 2 years, at which point Part 450 licenses will be fully implemented and the FAA AST office will no longer need this authority. If that's not the case, we will revisit and reassess as necessary. My amendment would also expedite the approval processes for the operations in the government to determine so that the government can determine what is in the nation's interest. It also directs the FAA to provide reports to Congress on its efforts to staff up the Office of Commercial Space Transportation, what steps it has taken to streamline the launch approval process, and to confirm it as encouraging American global competitiveness in the commercial space industry. Overall, my amendment removes roadblocks to the safe and rapid launch of commercial space operations. It protects, public safety while enabling innovation and supports vital projects like the Artemis program. China is rapidly ramping up their launch cadence, threatening our leadership in this industry, and this amendment is a common-sense proposal to ensure that we don't lose our global leadership in the commercial space theater. This is a bipartisan amendment. It should be noted that it's supported not only by industry partners, but also endorsed by Commercial Spaceflight Federation. And I want to thank our colleague, Representative Stevens, for her support on this amendment, and I urge all my colleagues to support. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does the gentlelady from Michigan seek to be recognized? Ms. Stevens, for 5 minutes, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague, Congressman Mike Garcia, whose leadership I appreciate on this committee very much. He's stayed the course and is spot on when he describes some of the deep challenges that we have with the FAA, particularly with the understaffing. And this appears to be almost agency-wide, but as we're looking at this legislation here today, and particularly this amendment, in the spirit of bipartisanship, it is important that we come together to not just kick the can down the road, but to lead and to act. And within the authority vested in us as members of Congress, this bipartisan amendment seeks to solve a part of these issues, these challenges with the FAA and commercial space leadership. And frankly, leadership here is just so critical. We are in vast competition around the world. We don't want to have outdated laws, bureaucracy, understaffing getting in the way of where America can shine and can continue to do its best work. So I sincerely look forward to continuing to work with everyone on this committee to continue to come up with bipartisan solutions that move this country forward, that move industry forward. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Lucas, and I'm going to speak in somewhat reluctant opposition to this amendment. I say that because I strongly agree that the backlog for commercial space launch licensing is a serious problem and one that we need to address. I should also add that I'm not philosophically opposed to many of the items in the amendment. Having said that, I do have some concerns that I think can be easily addressed before this is considered on the floor. It's my understanding we do not have feedback from the FAA on the pilot program contemplated in the revised amendment, and that's not surprising because this is a new provision that we saw only yesterday. But I would like to get the Department of Transportation's feedback on whether they see any challenges to implement this provision before I commit to supporting it. I'll flag an example of something that could potentially be problematic. The amendment appears to contemplate that an applicant seeking expedited review of their license application would reimburse the department for any costs associated with the expedited review. That's fine. However, the amendment doesn't actually implement any sort of process to ensure that this reimbursement would stay in the department. Now, it's my understanding that without express congressional direction, any monies collected by the government flow directly into the Treasury. So under this amendment, even if companies made reimbursement payments to the department, those payments would not actually reimburse the department for their efforts, but would instead flow into the general fund. Congress has accommodated this problem in certain other areas of the government. For example, the Patent and Trademark Office gets fees for the approval of patents or the review of patents. Those fees stay in the PTO to fund operations. USCIS accepts fees from people seeking to have immigration matters implemented. Those fees stay to offset the costs in the department. I think we need to do something like that here. Why does this matter? Because as the amendment is currently written, the department would expend extra resources to expedite these licenses, but would not actually be reimbursed for their expenditures. That would actually exacerbate the resource problems the Office of Commercial Space Transportation is experiencing, potentially leading to even more licensing delays, not the intent of the amendment. I have other thoughts about this amendment, but I think this illustrates the tenor of my concerns. I think with some vetting and review, we can come up with some fixes for some of the errors here, and that we will be able, all of us, to support this amendment and the efforts. I want to thank both of the members who have worked hard, and they are exactly right. This is a problem that needs a solution. I'm hoping that between now and the floor, we'll have an opportunity to come together and make sure that we're all satisfied that this amendment will accomplish its goals. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing no others, the question on agreeing to Garcia Amendment number 29. All in favor will signify by saying aye. All those opposed will say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The next amendment on the roster is offered by the gentlewoman from Colorado, Ms. Carvalho. The clerk will
Sorry, go ahead.
the clerk will report Carvalho amendment number 58.
Amendment to H.R. 6131, offered by Ms. Caraveo of Colorado.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Lucas, for holding this markup today. I'd like to associate myself with the concerns raised by Ranking Member Lofgren on the underlying bill, and I do hope that we can continue to work together in a bipartisan fashion as it makes its way to the floor. This committee has proven to be one of the most effective in Congress, and that strength comes from the ability to listen to each other and compromise. So I look forward to working with Chairs Lucas and Babin and Ranking Members Lofgren and Sorensen to make sure we have a strong product to put on the House floor. Now, as many of my colleagues have heard me say, Colorado is leading the way when it comes to space innovation. One of the ways we are pushing forward is with spaceports, which are ground-based launch and re-entry sites that can be used to support ventures into space. There are several spaceports across the country, including one right in Adams County, the Colorado Air and Spaceport. This spaceport is specializing in horizontal takeoffs and landings, which helps distinguish it from others. However, like many other spaceports, it must address infrastructure needs in order to build up its capacity. That is where my amendment comes in. My amendment would encourage development of commercial spaceports through reauthorization and modernization of the FAA's Space Transportation Infrastructure Matching Program. This program helps develop U.S. space transportation capabilities by providing federal grants for spaceport infrastructure projects, similar to how the Air Improvement Program serves public use airports. However, the program effectively lapsed in 2012 and hasn't been updated since 1994. While I am excited to offer this amendment, I know there is more work still to be done on it. That is why I intend to withdraw my amendment in hopes of working with the majority to get the language to a place that is suitable for both sides. I'd like to thank my colleague, Representative Keene, for his work on this amendment, and I look forward to continuing to work with him on it. I'd also like to thank Senators Hickenlooper and Cornyn for leading this effort in the Senate. With that, I'll ask the chairman for his commitment to continue working on this issue, and I will withdraw the amendment. I yield back.
Gentle lady yields back, and Chair recognizes himself. I want to thank Ms. Carvalho for agreeing to work with me on the amendment. As we move forward in the process, Oklahoma's 3rd Congressional District is home of the Oklahoma Air and Spaceport, so I share her interest in seeing that the success of spaceports across the country succeed, and I commit to working with her on this issue as we move towards the floor. And with that, I yield back. Seek to be recognized to speak on the amendment. Hearing no others, the question is on the amendment that was withdrawn. Thank you. That almost got me, didn't it? The last amendment on the roster is also offered by the gentlewoman of Colorado, Mrs. Caraveo. The clerk will report Caraveo amendment number 59.
Amendment to H.R. 6131, offered by Ms. Caraveo of Colorado.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you again, Chairman Lucas, and in particular for the commitment to work together on the last amendment. Once again, Colorado is a hub for space innovation, and one of the areas we believe needs to be addressed at the national level is space resources. This amendment is based off of my bipartisan bill, the Space Resources Institute Act, which I introduced earlier this year with my colleague from Colorado, Representative Lamborn. It would direct NASA and the Department of Commerce to look into establishing an educational institute to support research on space resources. There has been growing interest over the past decade in the practice of using materials found or manufactured on other astronomical objects like the moon or asteroids to replace materials that would have otherwise been brought from Earth. This is more commonly known as in situ resource utilization, or ISRU. While NASA, academic institutions, and the commercial industry have worked to advance research in this field, there is no central hub to support the development of foundational science and technology for effectively using space resources. My amendment would ensure the federal government begins the process of looking into the possibility of creating the central hub, which would sponsor basic scientific research, resource mapping, and technology development, enabling the capture and utilization utilization of space resources. Ensuring the United States maintains its preeminence in space is vital to our national security, and this amendment will help us stay ahead of our global competitors. I would again like to thank the committee for its consideration of this bipartisan proposal and would ask for my colleagues' support on this amendment. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. I recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I want to thank Mrs. Carveo for offering this amendment, which would require the NASA Administrator and Secretary of Commerce to submit a report to Congress on the merits of establishing a Space Resources Institute. I support this amendment, and I hope my colleagues will as well. Yield back. Recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask unanimous consent to put into the record 51 U.S.C. Subtitle 6, Chapter 601, Subchapter 3, Licensing of Private Remote Sensing Space Systems, noting that an error was made earlier. Section A6 provides that the Secretary may seize any object, record, or report pursuant to a warrant from a magistrate, not a judge, based on the showing of probable cause, et cetera. And I'd ask unanimous consent to put that statute into the record.
Seeing no objection, so ordered.
Not a district court judge. Correct. No. I misspoke. I mean, as a magistrate judge, a magistrate is a judge, but not the district court judge was my intent. Article 3 judge.
Does any other member wish to speak, be recognized to speak on the amendment? Hearing no other request for time to speak on the amendment, the question now is on agreeing to the Carveo Amendment number 59. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do indeed have it, and the amendment is agreed to. There are no other amendments pre-filed on this bill. Does any member wish to offer an amendment at this time? Hearing none, the ranking member and I have consulted, and because of the nature of the votes today on the floor and the nature of additional information that has become available to us, and members in certain cases being unable to get to the committee room on time, pursuant to Committee Rule 2F of House Rule 11, further proceedings on H.R. 6213 and H.R. 6131 will be postponed until after the Thanksgiving holiday. We'll notice the scheduled votes with plenty of time. The committee stands adjourned.